1550 is when they...
At 1,515 feet is when they made a timely decision to leave the airplane.
Okay,
That
and
was the best decision they had made.
because of
considering what happened.
crew error in this case, does any kind of disciplinary action occur, or is the crash considered?
General Hodges?
There are disciplinary avenues available, and I am the commander, and I make that decision. And I will make that decision sometime in the future. Right now, I'm more concerned with getting Major Reynolds healed and back to a position where he can be productive to the
What
Air
are
Force.
their conditions right now?
Say again?
What are the conditions of Reynolds and Wanacek right now? Where are they?
Well, I think I can answer Wanacek very easily because he was married the 15th of September. So I think you can gain from that what his condition is. He's been released from the hospital. He's convalescing. Major Reynolds is at home. He is on a special hospital bed. He is confined to the bed. In other words, he cannot get up and function in the house. He will be in this condition for about 3 more weeks before the medical people will permit him to exercise or to put stress on his back. Remember, he had a very serious spinal operation. But he is recovering well. He has regained most of the feeling in his legs and in other areas, and the prognosis is that he will fully recover.
Can he fly again for the Air Force?
It's hard to say whether he will recover that far. I think that's premature.
The doctor's words in the report are questioned.
General, I'd like to go back if I could.
Yes.
John Brooks, KFWB. You said, I believe, that it was Pilot Benefield's physical responsibility to turn the rotator dial. If he does not do that, is there a procedure where the pilot says, all right, goes down his checklist and would catch that type of error?
As I said, the test cards were built to establish the configuration. The test cards had the information in the proper order to be accomplished. They were using the test cards as their checklist.
I'm just trying to say, in the cockpit drill, would it not
Yes.
be one person would do something, the other person would say check to that or whatever?
Sir, would you like to
Is it
address that?
independent,
since
is
they
it
were-
independent of each other?
One of the elements in this, of course, going through any test program out here, you have a third group of people called the control room. And when you're running tests like this, they get telemetry data and they can read the configuration of the aircraft and what actually is being, what is occurring on the test. Going between configuration changes, the control room was fully engaged with the test, looking for the airspeeds, the altitudes and such, for the minimum control airspeed portions of the test. The control room was not in the loop or involved with configuration changes. That procedure has since been changed.
Bill Sweetman, in Arabia. It seems to me that the aircraft was set up in an entering into an uncontrollable configuration as soon as the wings were selected forwards. At what point does do the aircraft systems sense a clash between CG position and wing sweep selection, other aspects of configuration selection, and issue a warning?
I think if you recall the events leading up to the crash slide that I had, that master caution light, and you know how we know that, we had a very highly instrumented airplane, so we knew when all the lights were coming on. It came on just before the wings reached their forward position. So we can pin that down to within 5 seconds of when that light came on. And I think it was pretty graphic when the light came on. I think that answers your question.
Is it possible? Would it be possible in future versions to maybe have a warning that would begin to operate when the control inputs were made that would send the aircraft into that position?
Well, you can make this totally automatic control, but then should there be a systems malfunction, then the crew would lose control of the airplane. We looked at all of those alternatives at fairly great length, and I think it was determined that this was the best arrangement, considering all the factors in that system design.
No, right here, please, up front.
Jules Bergman, ABC Music Band. You three generals are all, I notice, senior pilots, vast experience. place yourselves in that cockpit for a moment. Your caution light comes on, the CG is clearly out of whack, the wing is swinging forward, you know something is going wrong. Would you not then act?
Let me try this. I'm not so sure. I think you've got a different definition of recognizing some pilot cue that they recognize something's going wrong. They didn't recognize anything was going wrong until they got the pitch up. Had they recognized something was going wrong, they would have taken corrective action.
They failed to notice the FCG gauge?
They failed to recognize the FCG gauge, yes.
They should have, though.
Yes, they should have.
General Odgers, George Lewis with NBC News. You mentioned earlier that the, I guess that's the end of the tether. You mentioned earlier that the procedures for communicating with the ground had been changed. You were mentioning the control room on the ground monitoring certain functions of the aircraft. I'm trying to get a little clearer picture of what the crew was actually engaged in and why they might have ignored the control functions for the CG. Is it possible then that they were communicating with the ground about these other aspects of the test and were not looking at the center of gravity, that they were more worried about airspeeds and other parameters of the aircraft at that point? And is that why you've changed that procedure? Was there a possible element of distraction involved there?
Well, there were portions of distraction where there were conversations going on about the previous test point and the weight and such that they might want to repeat one of those previous test points because of a weight change. And it's very critical to what your weight is on those particular points. What I was trying to say to you was, here we have a control room that's staffed by engineering personnel who are very familiar with the B-1. And part of the instrumentation they look at is CG position, wing position, so they have all these parameters available to them. What they were not doing was checking on the configuration change between test points. They were setting up for one test point, having completed that one test point, they were getting set for the next test point, and anything that occurred in between, they weren't paying attention to. That's the procedure that we have changed to the point where now it is a command and response type procedure. In other words, before you sweep wings, we must have confirmation on the ground from the test director on the ground that your CG is either starting to move forward or is within the positive range of where your wing sweep is going.
So
that's what was changed.
So in the future, somebody on the ground might be able to catch that problem and warn the crew in time?
Absolutely. And we do that during hazardous tests. This was not a hazardous test. Had it been a hazardous test, the people in the control room would have been monitoring these particular configuration changes.
Had the
My
engine power
report
gone
details
back?
the activities in the control room.
Had the engine power been pulled back, or was it full? Was the power on in all four engines at the time of the crash?
Maximum afterburner at time of crash.
On all four.
Or full.
Yes.
Was there any indication why that explosive bolt failed? You said there was a signal to it.
Yes.
Why did it not function?
As you probably realize, the material, the explosive material in the bolt did function, but it did not function in a manner that would generate the proper shock wave to separate, fracture the bolt. It's been through the materials laboratory, the Air Force materials laboratory back at Wright-Patterson. We've had it with the Navy folks back at Indian Head, and it's been torn down, and once the propellant or the explosive material is detonated, it's very difficult to tell what was wrong with it. It could have been damp, there could have been a number of things wrong with it. But the bolt itself, in terms of the material, the material was satisfactory. Had it gotten the right impulse, the right shock wave generated by the explosive charge, it would have separated. In fact, what happened was that the gas actually leaked out behind the bolt, and consequently the shock wave was never generated properly to fracture the bolt. That is also well documented. That's also well documented in the report, and all the laboratory analyses are in there.
Excuse me, sir, is it possible to hold that bolt out of a plastic bag?
Well, I don't want to touch it until, we may have some more analysis done on it, and I don't want to get my fingers on it any more than I have to.
If you don't get that shock, you can get a burning, and all you do is build up pressure, and it will back off the bolt.
Yes.
And that's what happened. It actually almost unscrewed itself.
So the igniter train and the explosive capsule inside, everything functioned but it didn't function properly. And like I said, once that explosive is gone, it's very difficult to tell what the problem was, because your evidence has disappeared.
Ray Suarez, Cable News again. Given that during this test pattern, the plane was doing a variety of maneuvers, various speeds, various altitudes, also adjusting the landing gear, the wings, and also at this point, because of the setting of the switch, expected to shift the weight of the fuel in the plane. Is there conceivably, this is a bit of an abstract point, but is there conceivably a point at which planes become over-designed and even in the hands of experienced pilots, even experienced on this model, too difficult to fly? That's certainly been an issue in military procurement lately, where high-tech just builds up to a point where it exceeds human capability.
From a factual point of view of this report and the look that I have done at previous test points, there are no safety implications here at all. The aircraft is designed properly if the CG is put at the correct point. And as we said before, both pilots have done similar points with similar center of gravity locations. However, on those occasions, the center of gravity was where it was supposed to be. So there's no safety implications for the aircraft or anything like that. We found nothing at all in searching out the facts surrounding this accident that gave us any indication that way.
We have 3 more questions, and then do you want to follow up on that? Let me follow up on that. You know, the automated features that we put in modern aircraft, whether they be fighters or bombers, make those airplanes easier to fly and reduce the workload on the crew. So, you know, the complication that's going into those airplanes make them better functioning machines for the missions that they have to fly. In this case, we were not using those automated features because we were checking some handling qualities work, which we have to know should something go wrong with those automated features. And so we should not be misled in thinking that it's the sophistication that resulted in this accident. Actually, the sophistication makes it a better airplane.
Is there anyone who has not had an opportunity to ask a question that would?
General, I'm Mike Trice from the Bakersfield, California. Have there been any other accidents or close calls due to similar CG type problems?
I did not determine any in my investigation.
Okay. Not with any other kind of aircraft or?
The only thing that I investigated was this particular B-1 accident, and I have not gone and looked. My job is to gather the facts, not make any conclusions or recommendations. And the facts surrounding this accident do not show any of that particular problem in the past.
Just to make sure I understand, when you say 45% and 21% CG, can you explain exactly what you mean by that?
Okay. We're going to have to get in a little aerodynamics. You ready? It's percent mean aerodynamic chord, which is a point along the chord of the wing. That's the width of the wing, and it's kind of a reference point. You know, it could be a flagpole, it could be anything, because we're taking a percentage of a fixed length, and that's where the mean aerodynamic chord term comes from. And instead of being at 45% of that mean aerodynamic chord, it should have been at 21% of that mean aerodynamic chord. But mean aerodynamic chord is just a reference point. The key is that it was 25% in air.
Last question?
At what point did the cautionary lights go off?
The CG limits light never went off. It remained on according to our instrumentation until the capsule separated from the aircraft, when all the electrics are terminated when it separates. The master caution light, as I showed you, was extinguished.
And you have no explanation for why that occurred or when it occurred?
The only thing my facts have uncovered is that the pilot, Major Reynolds, does not remember seeing it on.
In what period of time is that, is the first light on, then the second light before it finally pitches up and...
I'd have to put that slide back up there to go through the time. The slides, well...
Are we talking minutes or seconds?
Oh, probably, I'd say a minute or so, minute and a half maybe, if I remember the position on the slide.
So if shifting fuel takes as long as we learned it does, that might have even been too late at that point to make the changes that would have required, or could have you swept the wings then back, put on full...
Yeah, I don't believe so. If the wings would have been swept in increments, then the center of gravity would have time to be able to reposition properly, as has been done on many, many flights before. But we have not seen that problem of the transfer time.
He can't swing his